All right, welcome back to the Just Some BS podcast. Today we are doing a solo pod. I like to throw these in every once in a while, usually when I have like a gap or need to fill some or do a little backlog. So today, a little bit of a different concept. I don't know how this is going to go, but essentially I went on ChatGPT and I asked, based on the internet, Google, SEO, what are 10 real questions everyone has about being a CEO but doesn't always ask? So I have not seen these. I have not prepped for these. This is going to be off the rip because I think that's more fun. And let's see if I can actually do it because I think it could be good practice. So 10 real questions everyone has about being a CEO but doesn't always ask. Number one, what does a CEO actually do all day? So this one's actually kind of funny because I actually got this question recently, mostly around another CEO slash president because I don't actually know how to do a lot of what goes on. Like I can't build things. So as a steel metal fabrication company, like I don't have those skill sets. So another president slash CEO asked me, so because you don't know how to do that, what do you do all day? I thought it was a fascinating question. So really it's around, for me, removing blockades, solving process issues, improving process, improving efficiency, obviously a culture monster, heavy into safety as well, safety culture and continuous improvement, dashboards, KPI improvements, just making people happy genuinely, and then everything to gain tiny efficiencies. So I'm very much into the 1%, reading Atomic Habits right now. So if you look around your company, you find little efficiencies that you can gain all over the place, and then I'm a big collaboration monster as well. So really focusing on all of those kind of different areas. But me personally, I'm also the sales manager. I'm also the purchasing manager. So I have multiple roles inside of those to sometimes dig in deeper than I probably want to, but that's okay. And then just process improvement a lot, and making people happy. That's what I do all day. I don't know if that's what everybody else does, but that's what I do. Number two, what's the hardest part of being a CEO that no one talks about? Probably the shitty days. And what I mean by that is in the sense of like, you don't always have an outlet, unless you have a peer group. We obviously don't meet all the time, but if you have a peer group and you have members in that peer group that you can reach out to when things are tough, the other piece of that is getting in your own head. I've talked about imposter syndrome quite a bit. That can be a real SOB, especially when things go wrong, you don't do things well. We all talk about failures and how we should be doing them and comfortable with them. They're never comfortable. Like doing something wrong isn't comfortable. I'm sure there's people out there who are really good at it. I'm not yet. It's still difficult at times. So I would say forging into something that's with uncertainty and then having a crappy day on multiple fronts. It could be about literally anything, because sometimes you have to carry that weight alone. And if you don't have a peer group or you can't reach out or you're just kind of processing it yourself and then keeping out of your own head, I think would be the hardest part, at least for me. Number three, how do you handle decision fatigue and still make the right calls? That's a gangster question. How do you handle decision fatigue and still make the right calls? So, decision fatigue for me is making sure that your team around you has enough power to make decisions on themselves. Like, I do feel decision fatigue can come from when you have to be the center of everything. So if you're CEO, leader, president, whatever that is, and you have your hands in a lot of the cookie jars or you're involved in a lot, maybe it's because of just don't have the staff or poor delegation or feeling like you have to be involved in everything. I think that can lead to decision fatigue. But I think if you give the people the power, the flexibility, the accountability, to follow the process, do the things they want, express themselves, innovate, I think they're going to make good decisions. And if you can have the KPIs in place and the data and insights to hold those decisions accountable, good, bad, or indifferent, you're going to have everything in between. And if we talk about everybody needs to fail, well, you got to let other people fail as well, not only yourself. So I think decision fatigue is really trusting the people around you to do their job, to do it well, giving them space to do it, giving them space to fail or make mistakes and learn. So you don't have to be involved in every decision. That should help with your fatigue. And then make the right calls really is around having enough information and enough data so that everyone feels that the tiny dark corners are covered. and then you can make the right call. Now, the tough thing with that is making it in a timely fashion. I know plenty of people go down the road of, making decisions timely, and sometimes just sending it, even if you don't know all the information. I'm very much a data monster, so I feel the data's got to be there to make a good decision. So I probably make decisions a little bit slower than you should. 4, what's one mistake you made as a CEO that taught you the most? I made plenty. I think for that one is probably going to be people focused, and maybe 2-prong here. One was like, you don't need to ever yell at people, ever. I think I've done it 4 times since being at SWF, and I look back and hate every single time of them because I was just out of control with my emotions, and it could have been handled in way better ways. So that is not necessary in any sense. And then I would say the other part of that is making sure, you're really pulling the whole picture. And that's why I think data is really important, and getting information, getting the whole story, getting both sides, getting all the sides, bringing people together. Like when you have to process really complex things and when emotions are involved between individuals, you're going to have to, get a lot more story than you probably think you need to. So go above and beyond in digging that data, getting your touch points with other people, all that stuff, because, those decisions can be very big very quickly. So really mine's probably around people and making mistakes with people. I look back on those the most, and those are the ones that make me the saddest. Everything else, like on the failure piece of it, I can get over quicker, but the people one I think is a little bit more difficult. How do you motivate and lead people who are smarter than you? Well, that's a lot of people, so I better be good at this. Motivate and lead people who are smarter than you. Well, I do believe you can. I mean, part of the reason I do this podcast is because I think you can learn something from everyone. So, I mean, you're always going to be ignorant at something. It could be anything. I mean, like I'm terrible at basketball and tennis. Like, so I have ignorances on how to play them correctly. To anything down to like, it could be something more serious along the lines of like struggle with culture or project finance, or what does good quality look like, or what are good KPIs for finance from a corporate perspective. Like some of that stuff, that's always going to happen. There are going to be things you don't know until you walk down that road. So I think motivation and leading don't necessarily correlate to intelligence. I don't know if that makes sense, but it's more around like, I think you can be positive. I think you can give people space to be creative, for innovation, accountability, flexibility, all the things that people really want, and have respect for everyone, be as clear as you possibly can, have transparency. I think that stuff is motivating and really the leading pillars more than like intelligence overall. Because I do think if you're walking in and always thinking you're the smartest person in the room, that humility piece is enormous. So kind of wrapping your head around that, I think, is more important than just basic intelligence. I also used to believe that, and I think I've said this multiple times, possibly on the podcast, but I used to believe that you can only lead people when you've done all of the jobs for all of your teammates. Obviously, don't believe that anymore, because I can't do half the shit that's done in the shop. Not even half. 99%. But I remember saying that to my old president at my old at my old job, and he was laughing at me, and I couldn't figure out why he was laughing at me. And obviously he was laughing at me because it was a young, immature statement. Because I think real leadership comes from all of those kind of feel good things, and with the space and all the things that people want, versus having to have all the answers. I say literally probably 100 times a day, no idea, gonna have to look into it, or that's not my wheelhouse, or I'm out of my swim lane. That's one of my favorites. Like all those things, just to let people know, like the context of like, this is kind of outside of the area that I should be. So I'm going to have to get help, or I'm going to have to bring somebody else in. So not afraid of that at all. But I think that's how I lead people who are smarter than me, which is a lot of people. Big emphasis on you can learn something from everyone. If you go into that headspace and really read Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, and show that people, like, there's a big motivation to just spending a little time learning about someone before you actually meet them, it goes a long way. So give that a try. Number 6, How do you switch off at night when everything falls on you? For those of you listening right now, I'm staring at my gaming console and monitor. I mean, I could be staring straight ahead because I also play on this computer, but one, I think you need hobbies. I have lots of them, and they're important to me. I think that helps me turn things off. I don't understand the whole thing right now with like work-life balance isn't a real word and you can never have it. And like, I don't know, there's always these fads where we're going through word usage and it's really kind of, I feel like the same thing when it's in the grand scheme of things. But to me, the switch off is I'm an early riser person. So I like getting into work between 4:30 and 5. I love getting out sometime in the early afternoon if I can, 3:34 at the latest, if I can pull that off. Usually I can. And it's just managing that workload, right? So lots of delegation, trusting in people to do their job, having good balance, having the understanding of workload for people, jumping when you have to, right? There's always going to be fires and you jump in and help. But it doesn't have to be all the time. If you live in fires all the time, I don't think that's healthy. So I don't think you can have a switch off. So a lot of that comes from process and efficiency and understanding workload at work and improving those processes to allow you, I feel, to have the space for things that aren't work related. Some people like social things. Some people like going to mixers. Some people like going to events or leadership events and things like that. Mine's sitting in this room, either getting lost in, some Red Dead Redemption 2 or something, or any type of video game, or just like, working on things that I think are important outside of, the day-to-day work. So I think you have to have a real understanding of your own workload, how much you're involved with, understanding what you don't or do have to be involved with kind of on the business instead of in the business, especially from the CEO role. Living that, you're going to have to give yourself space to be more of that visionary person or strategic person. That's also hard for me. It's taken me probably a couple of years to wrap my head around what that means and get out of the weeds and give myself space to think in that realm. Because I think if you're in the day to day and you're just grinding along in the weeds, you'll never have the brain capacity to get out farther, which could end up hurting you in the long run. So I think switching off at night is really down to a lot of what you get involved with or trust with the people that are in the company that you don't have to handle. I think that's my answer. That was long-winded, sorry. Number 7. What are we at? 12 minutes? Okay. What's your process for setting vision and getting people aligned? So this is a new one for me in the sense of vision, mission statement, just cause statement, values. We've had values for quite a while. Like they're kind of like everybody knows what they are. I'm actually going through the just cause kind of discovery process right now that I created, reading, Simon Sinek's book, The Infinite Game. And then really, I've been kind of, when I get down things where I know they're important, for instance, like was on the fence about telling people how to behave in the company until it finally clicked at a presentation. I was like, okay, that's why it's important. It took me a while to like get and wrap my head around like, do you really need it? I get stuck in that space until something clicks with me or someone says something, or I'm listening to a presentation for someone where it really sets in or settles in and I'm like, eureka, like now that makes sense and let's move forward. So I think this vision thing was in that realm where I now understand that the vision is like the flag in the future that everybody's going towards. And what's nice, and I don't think I understood this prior, is vision is something you can move, or you can retarget once you either reach it or maybe the goals change in the company. So that was very helpful. I think the Just Cause discovery program or process that I created for SWF, like it took me forever to understand that it wasn't about me coming up with something. It was the process of people at the company being involved in that. And that was part of what gets people excited about something like that. So that also gives it legs for longevity and actually having meaning, is the collaboration of the team members being a part of that process. For some reason, I could not wrap my head around that until I did. And then I had one of those light bulb moments and it was like, if I think back through my career, I can think of many moments where it's like, seems so simple now, but it had to take me I had to go through kind of the brain process for myself to get to the other side to say, oh, okay, I see it now. And then other things I can see it way before I'm there. But, I sometimes get jammed up with specific things. And this is that mission statement, vision. And I didn't even know about Just Cause till I started reading the book. But we are pretty much, I think this Friday, we close our voting on the Just Cause statement. If you have any questions about like how I did that, what the process looks like, certainly let me know. I think the results that came out of the process were actually really awesome, and I think the team really liked them. Things like the best quotes or themes and things like that came out of the whole process was really beneficial. Not only just the Just Cause statement of what we stand for and what people really why we go to work. It was more along some of the themes that came up that I thought were really cool, and the team seemed to really like. So, vision for me is what's the target you're working on right now. And then getting alignment is really making that visible for everyone, talking about it, putting it out there, putting it on paper, but getting buy-in before you stamp it on paper. So making sure you're talking to strategic people throughout the company, that you trust their input, and then there are also strategic people in the company that have pull, right, with other employees. You don't have to get everybody in the room because they're probably not all going to agree on one specific thing, but people you trust. That have the values and kind of values of the company in what they do on a day-to-day basis. I would go that route. Then set the flag, set up KPIs for the vision, and then just report out and review them constantly. I think that is the easiest way to do that, to get people aligned for collaboration. Common goal. It's an easy way to get people on the same page. I wouldn't say easy. You know what I'm saying. It's a good way. Do you ever feel lonely in the role? And how do you deal with that? Yeah, for sure. I think we covered this a little bit earlier, but I would say the year 1, year 2, the imposter syndrome kind of realm was huge. And that took a while to get out of because you feel like you can't. At that point in time, I don't think I had a peer group. And I think when I got a peer group, then I actually was able to kind of like get that stuff off, because it's one of those things where you're ashamed to talk about it, but you may not have the things in the company, or you may not have the things around you to get out of that, because you need other people, because they bring perspective. I think it's very hard to give yourself perspective when you're in that like cycle of, am I good enough? Do I know enough? I made something, I screwed something up, blah, 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 blah. You go through that. So you really need to talk that out with people so they can say, whoa, zoom out. Let's talk about all the things you did really well. And like, you're allowed in this role to screw things up, even though you feel like you shouldn't or you can't. Every role's allowed to do that. So, one of my go-to things when I get a little upset with people getting stuck, I'll say get stuck in their ways. One thing I like to say is like, you wouldn't allow me to stand still, so we can't allow you to stand still. So that's where growth comes in. And I think that's the same thing with like screw ups, right? You're allowed to screw up, and it's not a witch hunt, or we're not going to fine or blame people. We're trying to find the root cause so we can try to prevent it from happening again. Same thing with, I think, CEO roles or leadership roles. Like, you have to give them space to mess things up, because then they're not trying new things. And there's the scared factor, or the lonely factor, or you always have to have the answers factor. So loneliness, I think, is peer groups, friends, people you can have real conversations with, I think kind of helps that. That may need to be outside the company, especially if it's something super sensitive. And then also having things outside of work, like we talked about, that the balance between the two, I think, gets you out of that space. You're not thinking about it 24/7, because that is not healthy or helpful at all. Number 9, how do you stay ahead without burning out? Once again, workload, managing your process, managing how much you're involved with. I would say when I got to SWF in this role, I was heavy into project management process, understanding how we run projects, refining some of that process, getting feedback, looking at what we do really well versus things we can improve on. And then once that gets set and your KPIs are set in stone and, they can be tweaked, but then you're watching the progress and it becomes pretty consistent, back yourself out. Let it go, right? Let your management run that piece of it and let the individuals have accountability and ownership of those pieces. And then you can go and plop yourself into the next thing, right? So really it's the fires you want to take care of and then, dive in, help take care of the fire, fix the process, whatever that is. And then you're back out, and then if you get a lot of that smoothed out or you feel like a lot of your processes or efficiencies are good, then you can kind of, you hover. And then when you have the issue, you dive in to help. And that issue could be something actually happened. You have an issue with a customer. You have an issue with an employee. Like, it gives you the headspace to enter those fires with a really good mindset. Because if you're just running constantly and burning yourself out, you could be going into some very, very sensitive situations, customer, employee, you name it, whatever, not in the right headspace. And then you could possibly do more damage. So you're going to have to give yourself time to kind of fly at that 30,000 feet. So you're in the vision, you're looking ahead, you're trying to stay ahead, you're finding little pockets of inefficiency that you can help strategy and support and grow the company from this level. And then when you have the fire, you dive in with your best version, and then you're going in and really helping the situation instead of hurting it. So I'd say that's the way to stay away from burnout, is what you're involved with, what your processes are to allow you to not be involved, and having lots of data to prove that everything's good or not good. Every aspect of the company should have a good or not good KPI so that you can always say, this is where my problems are, this is where they're not. And that allows you to jump around without being super subjective. Another reason data is very good: when you get a feeling about something or someone, you can go to the data and prove out that feeling. If that feeling is just, no, I'm just having a bad day and I'm not happy about something or someone because the data says it's okay, then you can back off. If you don't have that data, you're going in subjectively and you could actually end up making a situation pretty horrible. So data and insight, KPIs, get them. Number 10, what's one piece of advice you'd give to someone who wants to become a CEO? Limiting me to one piece of advice. I'm stuck between two, and we've already talked quite extensively about them. I would have to say probably some sort of group for perspective. I think it's very hard to personally improve for yourself and maybe even for the company in that type of leadership role if you do not have a group that's checking, keeping you in check, walking you through hard things, congratulating you on good things, keeping perspective, zooming out. All of that is so helpful, especially in that specific role. So realizing that you are going to need other people maybe is the piece of advice. And that's kind of like a millionfold. So it's peers, it's coaches, it's industry coaches, it's overall coaches, it's teammates, it's managers, it's executive managers, it's everything. You're going to need other people to be successful, unless you're a solopreneur. And it's a crazy business strategy I don't even think I fully can wrap my head around. So that was question 10. That was the top 10 questions based on ChatGPT/SEO/whatever. I don't know if that was any good. We're just about 24 or 25 minutes. If you liked that, let me know. If you thought it was cool, a little bit of a different take. Maybe I'll do some more of this that's kind of related to this, but not exactly this because, total ad hoc. Sorry if my answers were complete garbage. It was off the top of the head. I did not prepare because I think that is more fun. So I think that's all I have. That is the solo pod for this episode. As always, not once again, thank you for listening. Thank you for coming by. Thank you for keeping my numbers relatively high per month. I appreciate it. And if you need anything, let me know. Bye.